Lines with The Observer's chief leader writer, Sonia Soda, and Conservative Home's deputy editor, Henry Hill. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, The Eye leads with a warning from the new chief of Britain's military that the UK has 3 years to get ready for war in the face of rising threats from Russia, China, North Korea and Iran. The Guardian leads with the growing support for US presidential hopeful Kamala Harris and her pledge in a speech tonight that she will win the election in November. The expected jailing of hate preacher Anjem Choudhury for terror offences leads the Mail, which also asks why he was allowed to do what he did for so long. The Times reports that a government health advisor is urging that the long-term sick should be made to seek work. While The Telegraph says GPs are threatening to see fewer patients each day as part of a pay dispute. The Financial Times looks at a number of critical reports from the National Audit Office, including one on the effect on passengers of scrapping Phase 2 of HS2 and another warning that the NHS could be about to break. The Metro leads with the BBC Director General's apology over the Strictly Come Dancing bullying allegations and his insistence that the show will not be axed. That apology is also lead story in the Daily Express. The Mirror too makes it their lead item, while the Star focuses on the salary the BBC pays to presenter Gary Lineker with the headline, "Back of the Net." And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Sonia Soda and Henry Hill. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with that National Audit report on the front of the Financial Times, calling into question, the results of the HS2 being cut back and also the NHS being, I think the quote is, may break before it can meet standards expected by patients, and that ministers have tried to clear an epidemic of potholes without a good enough understanding of the condition of local roads.
So the NHS, there isn't much detail on the NHS in the FT, but the HS2 stuff is just absolutely extraordinary. What this country has managed to do is spend hundreds of millions of pounds on a new railway that is going to cut rail capacity, because what we've done is, because Rishi Sunak cancelled the so-called northern leg of HS2, of course, there were several other northern legs that had already been cut. But because he's cancelled the northern leg of HS2, beyond Birmingham, these trains are going to run on the existing line. But we've ordered custom new trains, which were designed around the much more high-speed line, and they're longer. And that means that they're going to be able to run fewer trains, potentially up to 17% fewer trains as a result of completing HS2 relative to what we have now. Now, you think about the whole case for HS2 was that you would actually hugely increase capacity. You'd shift expresses onto HS2. That means that all of a sudden the existing West Coast Main Line, 4 tracks, you could run twice as many commuter services, build lots of new homes. Actually, we've managed to spend a huge amount of money, and the government is saying, or the NAO is saying, that we might have to try and discourage people from using the trains as a result. It's just an absolutely extraordinary story.
Extraordinary position for the government to be in now, Sonia.
It is, and it's directly as a result of decisions of the last government. So the last government, under Rishi Sunak, were warned, if you take a step back from HS2, if you cancel the northern leg, it's going to end up costing a huge amount of money. You save a marginal amount, and yet there are going to be these huge sunk costs that are basically costs that the taxpayer have to foot anyway. And this report is really telling us what the consequences is. And as Henry said, it's actually a 17% decrease in capacity, the 17% decrease in the numbers of passengers that the Birmingham to Manchester leg of our train system can carry. It's just absolutely bonkers. And unfortunately, it's a decision that's already baked in. And it's very, very expensive to cancel infrastructure projects like this. So, for example, there are platforms that will be built that aren't needed, but they will be built because, it's part of the contracts. It's very expensive to cancel construction projects. So basically, once you go ahead with them, you're going ahead with them and they're getting built anyway, even though you don't need them. So that's clearly an issue. The new trains are already built, so we're going to have to use them, and they carry fewer people, as Henry has said. So it's quite extraordinary because, and I think it just goes to show how bad this country is at planning in terms of capacity for the future and how bad a decision it was that the last government took. And they were told at the time, you are saving an incremental amount of money here, shaving off an incremental amount of money, and the long-term consequences of this are going to be absolutely huge in terms of growth and infrastructure.
This government has to pick up.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that they might have to tell people to travel at different times because there's not the capacity.
we know we've got a climate crisis. We want people to be travelling by train. We should be encouraging more people to travel by train, and yet we're going to have less capacity and demand is going to exceed capacity. I mean, you honestly could not make it up.
Henry, take us to the Times and this headline, long-term sick should be forced to seek work. Who's saying this?
So this is Alan Milburn, who was previously a minister in the new Labour government and is now back as an advisor. And this is actually a very similar thing to what we heard from Mel Stride and the previous Conservative government on this, which is essentially that the previous government in its last few years was really concerned about what's the so-called economically inactive, right, which is the very large number of people. Although our headline unemployment rates are really low, we have a huge number of people who are not counted amongst the unemployment statistics because they're not seeking work. And one of the big groups of that is the long-term sick. And in the situation that we're in now, which is where we've had anemic growth for very many years, we have projections for pensions, social care, NHS that are only going up and becoming less affordable. There was a big push by the previous government to try and get people into work if they possibly could. And what's interesting here is that Alan Milburn, admittedly on the right of Labour on health questions, it has to be said, is echoing those concerns. And he's saying that actually benefits should be reformed so that people who are long-term sick, presumably subject to some kind of assessment, should be made to look for work as a condition of getting their benefits. Now, it's important to say Liz Kendall has not said that she'll do this, but the fact that we're having these debates on the front pages of the newspapers in, week 3 of the Labour government shows how difficult the next few years could be if they can't get growth up.
Sonia, are you surprised to see this headline from a Labour health advisor?
I'm not, because of the positioning that Alan Milburn's got in relation to the Labour Party, but I'm certainly also not surprised to see Liz Kendall wanting to talk this issue up. So, you know, it's a big part of Labour's manifesto. They want to move people who are long-term sick into work. The debate is always, is it carrots or is it sticks? So do you do it through more conditionality, or do you also have to improve the support that people need to move into work? And I have to say that given the last few years, so the two biggest reasons that people are not in work, particularly for young people, there's a real issue around young people saying they've got mental health issues. Now, we know that access to mental health services are quite dire when you look at waiting lists. And the other big cause is musculoskeletal conditions. And again, there are huge, waiting lists on the NHS for stuff like physiotherapy. So you've got people, stuck at home with chronic back pain who can't get a fix for it and who may really wanting to be work. So there is always going to be a debate about the right balance, I would say, given the barriers that there are to moving into work, because people just can't get some of these conditions seen to, you've got to put a lot more into the NHS, into improving that journey and that support. And that seems to be something that Liz Kendall was saying. It takes you back to this big question, though, which is Labour isn't promising to invest lots and lots of more money in the NHS, in these services. There is some extra money that it promised in its manifesto, but is it enough to answer this huge challenge? I mean, I think a lot of people in the NHS would say no.
We shall see. To the Telegraph, Henry, and James Cleverly has, well, I suppose we can say, officially launched his bid to be leader of the Conservative Party.
Yes, and they're off. No, he's the first one out of the trap. So yesterday evening, the Conservative Party announced what will almost certainly end up being the timetable for the leadership contest. It's very long. We're not going to have a new Tory leader until the 2nd of November. But now is the point at which the candidates are starting to come out, and James Cleverly is the first out of the traps. So I think we're expecting maybe a maximum of around 8 candidates, depending on how many put themselves forward. And the interesting thing about James is very much on the One Nation wing of the Conservative Party. And the way that Tory leadership contests tend to work is, well, the mechanism is that however many candidates there are, the MPs whittle it down to a final 2, and then the final 2 are voted on by Conservative members. Normally, there is a right-wing candidate and a more One Nation candidate. Tom Tugendhat is widely considered to be the front-runner for the One Nation slot because he's got a lot of MP support. So one wonders if James, by announcing early, is trying to overcome that advantage overtake Tom Tugendhat on that flank and get himself into the final two.
Well, Sonia, he's actually saying that he's got broad appeal and will hopefully unite the party.
What a task, eh? So, yes, I mean, that's his pitch, and we're going to be hearing a lot more, I think, from Conservative leadership candidates in the coming weeks. I think the really key thing will be the Conservative Party finds itself in the same position as the Labour Party has in the past, which is it's one member, one vote when it gets put to the members. And so there's a question about whether, you know, the membership, which are not really representative of people who vote Conservative in the country more broadly, will pick a leader that's got the best chance of the next election, or whether they're going to pick a leader who moves the Conservative Party further to the right and further away from a position of electability.
We shall see. Sonia and Henry, thank you very much for the moment. Coming up, we're going to be discussing this on the front of The Guardian. We will win this election, Harris tells Democrats in the United States. Stay with us for more on that.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. When you think of Glastonbury, it's mud you want and music. They're going to cross to us live in a minute. Okay.
We always were capable of doing this.
Oh, they're wonderful children as an audience.
Who did that?
Maverick here on the red carpet. I'm so excited. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
Nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
There's this illusion of power.
Are you feeling well?
I remember covering the Oscars and that now infamous moment, the Will Smith slap. You can tell from these crowds just how excited people are for the return of Pride.
These actors playing the lead roles were born long after the Sex Pistols broke up.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Don't leave me!
Yeah, okay.
There's no easy goodies. There's no easy baddies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. Alex Crawford joining us now from Ukraine.
Their personal possessions are all scattered around the place.
Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, try and make sense of the big numbers for us.
Things can change incredibly quickly, and that's what they have done.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Sonia Soda and Henry Hill. Let's take a look at The Guardian and take it stateside. the election campaign there. Kamala Harris, her first official speech today. Very feisty, very confident. Seems to have gone down well.
Well, so there are a lot of people on the Democratic side of politics in the US who were very pleased with how the last kind of 48 hours or so has gone. So since Biden has announced that he's stepping down, we've seen Kamala Harris sort of step forward essentially as a presumptive nominee now. It doesn't look like she's going to get challenged. She had a great first 24 hours of fundraising. So the Democrats say that she's raised 100 million, I think it was, in the day after Biden's withdrawal, largely from first-time donors, which I think is really interesting as well. And then she's addressed this rally in Wisconsin. I think the contrast with Biden, shall we say, is quite stark, given sort of how he's been coming across in recent debates, and obviously we know that one of the reasons he stepped aside, we assume, is for health reasons. And she's given a very rousing speech to her first rally, really G'd up the crowds. To some extent, that's kind of what you'd expect because she's speaking to her home team there. The real test will be, it seems like there are a lot of people on the left of American politics who are feeling incredibly energised now around her as a candidate. The real question will be, she's got 3 months or so to appeal to voters ahead of November's election, and that is still all to play for, I think.
105 days, I think she said herself today. Can she do it, Henry? She's very confident that they will win.
I mean, she can. I think it's going to be interesting to see whether or not perceptions change now that she's the presidential nominee, because historically her performance has not been very good. Her ratings as VP were not brilliant. She performed very, very badly in the Democratic primaries a few years ago. And as Sonia says, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, even Sarah Palin actually had a good 24 hours when she was picked as John McCain's running mate back in the day. But it is going to be a sustained campaign, and she will face that same tension that Biden did, which is, as Sonia says, there are a lot of very energised left-wing people in the left of the Democratic Party who were feeling very alienated from Biden over things like Gaza. And she is playing songs that they like. But American elections are won with independents and with voters who switch between the two main parties and in swing states, which are not core Democratic territory. And the key thing will be, can she keep the Democratic coalition on side whilst appealing to those groups? You know, I saw one split the other day which showed that she only had a 4-point lead over Donald Trump with women, which is extraordinary when you think about it. Now, can she open that up? Because if he keeps running her that close amongst her, like the Democrats' favoured demographics, then he still has to be odds on to win.
We shall see. Again, there's so much to look forward to, isn't there? The eye, very quickly, Sonia, we've only got I think less than a minute now. Okay. 3 years to get ready for war. This is the new Chief of General Staff.
Yeah, rather ominous warning. He's talking about a new axis of upheaval related to Russia, China, North Korea and Iran. So we're facing, as the West, multiple threats, multiple fronts. Some of them are working together. And he's using this, in some ways you might expect this from the new head of the army. He's saying it's very important we get prepared for this. We've got 3 years. There's also the risk of Trump presidency and what that would mean. But, this speech and this warning is coming at a time, I think, of maximum global instability, the most unstable global climate that we've seen for decades, really. So he's right. It's going to be a very important few years.
Indeed. Sonia and Henry, thank you very much. We're going to take a look at the weather for you now. Well, the next few days will be mainly dry, but there'll be showers around and more general rain at times, especially on Thursday. Most places will have a fine start tomorrow with an early fog, soon lifting, but Ireland will see patchy rain. It'll turn murky there, though, through the morning, with rain developing more widely, locally heavy. Northern Ireland will see rain by lunchtime too. Meanwhile, much of Britain will stay dry with plenty of sunshine, but cloud will bubble up to bring a few showers. Central and eastern England look most at risk. It'll be warmer than today for most places, especially across England and Wales. Central and eastern England and northeast Scotland will stay mostly fine through the afternoon. Coming up next on Sky News at 11. Kamala Harris takes to the stage to tell her supporters, when we fight, we win.